This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
All right, picture this scenario. You're a boxing gym owner in small town Pennsylvania. You're minding your own business, going about your life, when suddenly the FBI shows up at your door asking about that quiet kid who used to punch heavy bags in your gym decades ago. A quiet kid? He's now accused of one of the most notorious quadruple murders in recent American history. Welcome to Jesse Harris's life, folks, because he just got summoned to testify in the Bryan Kohberger trial, and his story is just the tip of an iceberg that's about to crash into the legal system this August. We're going to go through the witness list that has been released thus far and give you the latest on the case against Kohberger. As of right now, love to hear your thoughts in the comment section as we're inching closer and closer to jury selection and closer to an actual trial that is about to take place in the case against Bryan Kohberger. So please, in the comment section on YouTube, let me know what your thoughts are. Hit subscribe wherever you're downloading the podcast, or if it's on YouTube, hit it there as well so you can take part in our conversations, because there's a lot coming this year in this case. So here's what happened in the recent days that nobody saw coming. While the media was busy analyzing courtroom sketches and dissecting legal motions, Kohberger's defense team quietly filed an amended witness list that reads like a reunion invitation to his Pennsylvania past. We're talking about his boxing coach, his college professor, and his high school advisor, all getting dragged into what's shaping up to be the trial of the decade. It's like when you think you're just going to a casual dinner party and suddenly realize you're the entertainment. Let me back up and explain why this matters, because if you've been following this case, you know it's been moving at the speed of molasses in a snowstorm recently. Bryan Kohberger, the 30-year-old criminology PhD student, stands accused of allegedly stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death in November of 2022. Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. They were all found dead in their off-campus house in Moscow, Idaho, a town so small it hasn't seen a murder in at least 5 years. Think of Moscow, Idaho as the kind of place where the biggest crime is usually someone stealing lawn ornaments. And then suddenly it becomes ground zero for a case that has the entire country glued to their screens. They didn't ask for this, but they are dealing with this now. The prosecution's case has always been built like a house of cards, but instead of playing cards, they're using DNA evidence, cell phone data, and the testimony of surviving roommates. At the foundation of this house sits one crucial piece of evidence, a knife sheath found at the crime scene with what prosecutors claim is Kohberger's DNA on it. It is touch DNA, which is basically the genetic equivalent of leaving your business card at a crime scene, except way more microscopic and entirely more controversial. Now, here's where things get interesting with this new witness list. When defense attorneys start calling character witnesses, it's usually because they're trying to paint a different picture of their client than the one the prosecution is sketching. Think of it like Instagram versus reality. The prosecution wants to show the jury a calculated killer who allegedly used his criminology knowledge to plan the perfect crime. The defense apparently wants to introduce them to Bryan, the dedicated student. Bryan, the disciplined boxer. Bryan, the guy his professor called one of their brightest pupils ever. Let's talk about Marie Buler, because her story is fascinating in all the wrong ways. She's a criminology professor at DeSales University who taught Kohberger entirely through email and Zoom during the pandemic. Never met face-to-face, as far as we know, but she was so impressed with his academic work that she recommended him for a PhD program, allegedly, calling him one of only 2 students in a decade worthy of that recommendation, allegedly. She helped him with his master's thesis, which focused on how and why criminals commit crimes. If that doesn't make you do a double take, you might want to check your pulse. It's like having a driving instructor who's never seen you behind the wheel recommending you for Formula One racing, except the subject matter is considerably darker. Kohberger's reaction when Kohberger was arrested tells you everything about how shocking this has been for people who knew him. She told reporters, "I'm shocked as shit at what he's been accused of. I don't believe it, but I get it," allegedly. That's a kind of cognitive dissonance that makes for compelling testimony. Here's someone who studied his mind academically and found brilliance, now trying to reconcile that with allegations of brutal violence. And there's Jesse Harris, the boxing gym owner, who's probably wondering how teaching someone to throw punches led him to being summoned for a murder trial. Kohberger wrote in a 2015 job application that he boxed after school every day at the Jesse Harris boxing gym. This was during his transformation period when he allegedly lost 130 pounds between ages 15 and 16, going from what classmates described as an overweight, bullied kid to someone who became, in the words of former friends, aggressive and looking to fight somebody. It's like watching a real-life version of that movie Montage, where the underdog trains hard and emerges transformed, except this particular transformation story, it's taken a very dark turn. The defense is clearly trying to humanize Kohberger, showing the jury a young man who was disciplined enough to box daily and lose massive amounts of weight, dedicated enough to earn glowing academic recommendations, and normal enough to need school guidance counselors. It's character witness testimony 101. But in a case this high profile, every witness becomes a potential game changer. On the other side of this courtroom chess match, the prosecution has amassed what can only be described as an expert witness army. We're talking about over 25 specialists covering everything from DNA analysis to cell phone geolocation to crime scene reconstruction. If the defense witness list reads like a high school yearbook, the prosecution's expert list reads like a CSI convention program. The star of this expert witness list is Riley Nolan, and if you don't know her name yet, you will by the time this trial ends. She's a laboratory manager at the Idaho State Police Forensic Services who will testify about the DNA evidence found on that knife sheath. Nolan has been doing this for over 20 years, starting as a DNA analyst in 2002 and working her way up to lab manager. She's the kind of person who can explain complex DNA analysis in terms a jury can actually understand, which makes her either the prosecution's best friend or the defense's biggest headache, depending on which side you are rooting for in this case. Here's what makes Nolan's testimony crucial. She's going to explain something called secondary transfer of DNA, which is basically how genetic material can pass from person to object to another person. Think of DNA like glitter. If you have children or little girls, if glitter could send you to your death row, then we're all screwed as parents if you have little girls, because glitter will live in your home until eternity, till one day you sell your home, your children sell your home, your grandchildren sell your home, and you are dead. And your grandchildren look at that home and they go, "Mom, why is there all this glitter over here in this part of your room?" "Oh, when I was 7, I spilled a bottle of it," and they could never quite get it all out. That's what this is. Once it gets onto something, it spreads everywhere. And good luck explaining how it got there. The defense has hired their own DNA expert, Bika Barlow, who specializes in challenging DNA evidence and has worked over 200 cases. This is shaping up to be a battle of the DNA experts that could make or break the entire case. Maybe. The most compelling witness, though, might be the two young women who survived that night, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. These roommates went from college students worried about finals and weekend plans to key witnesses in a quadruple murder trial. Mortensen allegedly saw the masked perpetrator leave the house, describing him as having bushy eyebrows and being athletically built. She's the closest thing to an eyewitness the prosecution has. But here's the kicker. When Xana Kernodle, after his arrest, she couldn't definitively identify him as the man she saw that night. Think about that for a moment. You're in the house at 4 a.m., you see a masked figure in black clothing walking past your bedroom door, and months later you're asked to identify someone in a courtroom. Human brain is under trauma. It's about as reliable as a weather forecast, which is to say it's right just about enough to keep people paying attention, but wrong frequently enough to cause serious problems. The text messages between Mortensen and Funk, that night read like something out of a horror movie. No one is answering. I'm really confused. I'm freaking out. It's like a ski mask almost. These weren't drunk college students being dramatic. These were young women sensing something was very, very wrong. The prosecution will use these messages to establish timeline and state of mind. The defense will likely argue they show confusion and fear that could affect memory and perception. What's particularly interesting is the witnesses list is what reveals about each side's strategy. The prosecution is building a technical case, DNA, cell phone pings, Amazon purchase records, surveillance footage. They're painting a picture of someone who allegedly used his criminology knowledge to plan an attack, right down to buying the alleged weapon online months in advance. It's methodical. It's comprehensive. It's the kind of case that looks great on paper. The defense strategy appears more psychological. They're not just challenging the evidence. They're challenging the entire narrative of who Bryan Kohberger is as a person. The Pennsylvania witnesses serve as a specific purpose, showing the jury a young man who is academically gifted, physically disciplined, and well-regarded by some authority figures. It's a difference between presenting a defendant and presenting a human being, of which, depending who you talk to and when they had interactions with him, their opinion may change between a defendant and a human being. Or is he a human being? There's some who may argue the latter. But here's where the case gets really complicated and why that witness list matters so much. Kohberger was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and his defense team has argued this affects everything from his courtroom demeanor to his ability to understand social cues. They want to tell the jury that if he seems unemotional or detached during trial, it's because of his disability, which is not a true disability. So let's not pretend it is. Not because he's a cold-blooded killer. It's a delicate balance between autism, and it doesn't make someone violent, but it can affect how they're perceived by others, or it can make you violent, and it can make you have zero empathy for others, or it can make you the most empathetic damn person in the world. It all depends where you are on that spectrum. It can make you cold. It can make you calculating. It can make you an evil mother effer. It can also make you the kindest, most empathetic person out there. Again, it's a spectrum. It's not something where one size fits all. It's about as easy as saying, oh, you wear men's clothing. Yes, I do. Well, they wear men's clothing, so they must be wearing three-piece suits from 1968. No, I mean, that is men's clothing, but it doesn't mean you're wearing that. They could be wearing shorts and a t-shirt from 98. They could be wearing whatever the hell they wear today in 2025. It's like saying clothing. There's a spectrum of options that you have. Just understand that. The prosecution, meanwhile, has assembled experts who will testify about everything from toxology results to the victims to crime scene reconstructionists. They have FBI agents who will discuss cell phone tracking and video analysis. They have forensic specialists who can walk a jury through exactly what allegedly happened in that house. If trials were movies, the prosecution is making a documentary while the defense is crafting a character study or a YouTube short. One expert witness that particularly stands out is Special Agent Tony Immel, who will testify about identifying Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra from surveillance footage. This is significant because the car became a crucial piece of evidence early in the investigation. Police asked the public for help finding the white Elantra seen near the crime scene. And when they connected it to Kohberger, the case began to solidify. It's like when you lose your keys and retrace your steps, except in this case, the steps allegedly lead to a house where 4 people died. The timeline of events that night is crucial, and both sides will use their witnesses to either support or undermine the prosecution's version of what happened. According to investigators, the murders occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. That's a remarkably narrow window for such a horrific crime, and both sides will have experts trying to prove whether that timeline is realistic or impossible. What makes this case unique is how it sits in the intersection of old-school detective work and modern technology. The DNA evidence represents cutting-edge forensic science. But the investigation also relied on traditional techniques like interviewing witnesses and follow-up tips. The surviving roommates provide human testimony about what they saw and heard, while cell phone data provides digital breadcrumbs of what and where people allegedly were and when. The defense faces a particularly challenging task in all of this because they're not just arguing innocence, they're arguing against what appears to be a methodical investigation that connected multiple pieces of evidence. It's not enough to create reasonable doubt about one piece of evidence when the prosecution has DNA, cell phone data, vehicle identification, and eyewitness testimony. They need to challenge the entire foundation of the case. That is why that character witness strategy becomes so important. If you can't completely discredit the evidence, you try to discredit the narrative. The prosecution wants to tell a story about a criminology student who allegedly used his knowledge to commit the perfect crime, but made crucial mistakes. The defense wants to tell a story about a brilliant but misunderstood young man who's being railroaded by circumstantial evidence and procedural overreach. Or a psychotic cluster B personality who has autism, who, because of that cluster B personality disorder, went and killed people and doesn't seem to have any empathy. And he's even talked about it online before. The trial is scheduled to begin August 11th. The jury selection alone is expected to take 5 weeks. Finding 12 people who haven't formed opinions about this case is going to be interesting. The venue has moved from Moscow to Boise specifically because of the intense local attention, but this case has been national news for over 2 years now. What happens in that Boise courtroom this summer will determine whether Bryan Kohberger spends the rest of his life in prison, receives the death penalty, or walks free. For the families of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, it represents a chance for justice and maybe some sort of closure. For Kohberger, it's literally a matter of life or death. For the witnesses being called to testify, from boxing coaches to DNA experts to traumatized college students, it's a responsibility none of them ever expected to bear. The witness list tells us the trial will be a collision between two completely different versions of reality, and 12 jurors will have to decide which one they want to believe. In a case where the criminology student stands accused of murder, where DNA evidence meets character testimony, and where the line between academic study and alleged real-world application has become terrifyingly blurred, the only certainty is that nothing about this trial will be simple. The truth, as they say, is something in the details. Those details are about to be examined under the brightest possible spotlight. Tell me what you think thus far about the witness list that has been released, about the evidence that we know thus far, and where we are headed. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. Be sure to press subscribe there as well, and hit subscribe if you're listening to this as a podcast. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel, Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Search for it, and you can join in that conversation and see us in the studio doing these shows as well. We're also going to do lives there as well. So be sure to press subscribe over there so you don't miss any of that, and you can join in soon too. That'd be kind of fun. Not just chat. We're going to do phone calls as well. We're going to kick it old school. Anyway, check that out. Do appreciate you subscribing. And there's a lot to come in this case. We are just at the very beginning. I know we've been on it for 3 years, but we're about to get to the starting point of the trial. And I hope you'll be here for it as well. I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.